Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance Channel's Romance Roundup. I am Liz Donatelli.
And I'm Libby Kay, author of the sweet romance series Buckeye Falls.
Libby and I are sharing our list of must-read historical romances. If you're listening to us on Podbean or your preferred podcast app, then be sure to like and subscribe to Romance Roundup. Also, watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance's YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe. Libby, let the roundup begin.
Okay, giddy up, Liz. Here we go. I am so excited to talk about historical romances because while that's not usually what I read, it is definitely one of my favorite genres. So the first one I want to talk about today is one I actually saw on one of your summer episodes of Reader Seeks Romance, and it is Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman. And it just came out in August of this year from Forever Press. And it was an absolute delight. And it's also the first in her Once Upon the East End series. So, you know, I like a good series. So anything that's the beginning of something bigger is always exciting for me. So the thing I like about this are the tropes that are involved. Most specifically, yes, it's a Regency romance, but this is basically a reverse Cinderella fairy tale. And I really like that it takes place in Jewish culture in London in the 1830s. And I really thought that that added to the story in a fun way, which I'm sure you agree because you also read this book.
Yes, I did. And I very much enjoyed it. Yeah, there's a lot of great description of traditions and customs that I didn't realize were also celebrated back in the Regency era, which you don't think of Jewish communities thriving at that time in England, but they were. Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely felt like Felicia did her research on this. I like with historical when you learn something, but usually it's like you learn just enough without the story getting too dry, if that makes sense. Not that I don't want to learn things, but let's be real.
No, absolutely.
So the general premise of the book is we have our heroine, Isabel, who is a charming heiress who has to find a match that is suitable after her father's passing because she's basically in charge of the business. But because it's 1830s, she's not really in charge of the business, and she has to find a man to come in and basically run things on her behalf. Which is the downside of historical romances because I find myself getting annoyed because I'm thinking about it through a modern brain, but I digress. The flip side of Isabella, our rich heiress, is Aaron, who is the custodian of the local synagogue and an absolute sweetheart. And I really loved that the whole throughout the whole story, all he wants is to fall in love and have a family of his own. And he feels like that's out of reach. And I just thought that was just so darn sweet. And again, a nice twist on the Cinderella storyline. So I don't want to give away too much with the plot, but as you can guess, there will be, many opportunities for, a ball or, fancy parties for them to get together. And they end up helping each other and, of course, falling in love. And it was just really refreshing to read a historical romance just with different perspectives. And the writing was really sharp. I felt like there was humor peppered in at the right places, but and it was like just steamy enough, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Which again, I don't mind if it gets steamy, but I felt like it wasn't just like sometimes with with any romance, you feel like it's like, oh, new chapter, they're fooling around again. And it's like, that's great, but what are you going to do about the plot here? So I felt like Felicia really did a nice job with balancing like the steam level with, the plot line. So really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Again, this is Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman, and it's out now from Forever Press.
So let's stay in Europe, but we're going to go forward in time to 1889 to Paris and then Scotland.
Sign me up.
I am talking about A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera, published in 2022 by Harlequin imprint HQN Books, which actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, I didn't realize it. That imprint has been renamed to Canary Street Press.
No, I had no idea because I read a lot of the HQN books. Well, that's good to know.
So HQN Books is now Canary Street Press. And according to what I read, it's supposed to be a much more inclusive line.
Oh, nice.
So I guess in doing so, they decided to rebrand with a new name. A Caribbean Heiress in Paris is book 1 in Las Leones series. This historical romance, as I mentioned, is set in Paris. And then the other part of the book is in Scotland. And it is set during, according to the category on Amazon, it's Gilded Age, but it technically could also fall under Victorian era.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Victorian era was until 1901. So actually it's the latter part of the Victorian era, earlier part of Gilded Age. So in A Caribbean Heiress in Paris, the main protagonist is Luz Alana Heath Benzon, heiress of a rum empire located in the Dominican Republic. And Luz sails to Paris with her 2 best friends and her adorable 10-year-old sister. And they're sailing to Paris to participate, or at least Luz is going to participate as a merchant in the Exposition Universelle.
Oh, très bien.
Oh, good. You took French too, huh?
Yeah, about this much, and that's all I remember. So please don't expect me to know anymore.
So the exposition in Paris, the point is for merchants to show up and to secure investment opportunities and network and so on. Luz really needs an investor because the distillery in the Dominican Republic is in some financial trouble. So to ensure its long-term success, she goes to Europe to forge new business relationships. So when Luz Alana arrives, she is laughed at. She is a woman. She's a woman of color. But Earl of Darnick, James Evanston Sinclair, known as Evan, takes Luz Alana very seriously. He is really taken by this bold, brave, beautiful woman selling her rum. And Evan actually is involved in the whiskey business. That's his side gig to being an earl. So Evan wants to help Luz Alana to succeed, and he and Luz Alana decide to enter into a marriage of convenience for reasons I would prefer the reader find out on their own for the first time, because it does get a little complex with the reasons. Like, I can't really tell you the reasons without other stuff coming out. So, but they marry, and despite their best efforts, of course, they fall in love. So Adriana, I have mentioned her work before. I am a fan, and she invested a lot of time researching life in the Dominican Republic in the late 19th century to write this novel. She also did a lot of research on women in trade and business and the 1889 Paris Exposition, which is described in rich detail. Honestly, there's a lot of fantastic detail that really sets the scene. It almost reminded me of more of those old school historical romance, where there's a lot of time spent on the background and the vibe and the atmosphere and the people.
But again, she doesn't do it in a dry way. Like, it really just really sets the scene, and it just kept the story flowing. And
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. In addition to being a romance reader, I love history. I really am a history lover. So I'm always thrilled to learn about, cultures and people and communities I know little about. It was a thrill for me to read about a main cast of Afro-Latino women, some of whom are going to be in future books.
Which I'm excited about, because they all had their own quirks, and I really enjoyed the younger sister character, because sometimes when you throw a kid that age into a story, it's like, oh, where are we going with this? But I thought she was like the perfect foil for me to comic.
Yes. And there was a lot of great conversational banter between Luz Alana and her sister and her friends, where, because, of course, it's always great, banter between the romance protagonists, but I really appreciated how comfortable and, they all were with each other. Because, it brings to mind that, even back then, we imagine everyone stuffy and speaking so formal. But, when you were just speaking to your family and your good friends, it probably was a lot less formal. So I really like that she included student. It wasn't that everyone was so stuffy in and out of the drawing room. So it was a really a great cast of characters. I reread all of Adriana's notes in the back, her author notes. And in her own, this is Adriana's own words, quote, bringing to life BIPOC characters in a historical romance that had space to breathe and live their best lives was a dream come true. And I think that she said it best herself, like why I was so compelled by all of the characters.
That's a fabulous description.
Yes, it is. So aside from the rich historical detail, A Caribbean Heiress in Paris is epic in scope, spanning from, I mean, if you count that she comes from the Dominican Republic, then we land in Paris, then we go to Scotland, Edinburgh. The romance is epic. Well-developed, compelling characters, a sassy supporting cast, and delicious steamy times. There was that one there was some longing scenes, but then there was some really hot scenes. I think they were out on a balcony. And I know there was a lot of kisses and balconies. Then they were in a brothel watching a live show.
That.
And yeah. So So now book 2 in the Las Leonas series is a sapphic romance, and it's one of her best friends. And I don't recall her name, but the title is An Island Princess Starts a Scandal, and that released in 2023.
Oh, and it's out already. I totally missed that.
Yes. So check out A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera.
It was such a good book, and the cover's gorgeous. I love the cover.
Where are you taking us next in history, Libby?
Pretty much the same time, and we're going to stay in Scotland. So this one, and this is a recommendation from a fellow book club member. So it's a little bit older. It came out in 2009. It's The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. And this was, like I said, first came out in 2009 from Berkeley, but it has been re-released several times, and the covers keep getting swoonier and swoonier. So definitely check this out. It's book 1 in, I think there's like a dozen of them now in the Mackenzie series. So it takes place in 1880s in Scotland. And Ian and his brothers are all wearing kilts throughout the book. So I just want you to know that as I go into my general premise description here.
So the whole time? The whole time they were in kilts?
Yeah, pretty much. I think there might have been one scene where they were out at the opera and he wasn't in one. But I very much remember at the end, like the climax scene, like all the brothers coming together and thinking, good Lord, this is amazing. So yeah, plenty of kilts.
I would love to see that on the screen. Visually, that must be stunning. All of the tartan designs and
the designs, and I mean just the fact that there's 4 Scottish guys like who are gruff and like surly. I'm like, yes, please have that happen immediately. Hollywood, are you listening? So the general premise is the Mackenzie family is rich, they're powerful, they're eccentric, and they have this air of danger around them. And so people are always kind of like, stay away from those crazy Mackenzie guys. Which of course means that our heroine will not. So Ian is the youngest brother, and he is known as the Mad Mackenzie because he, as a youth, was institutionalized for some time. And so that's kind of the beginning of the story. And you're like, what the heck's going on with Ian here? Because he does seem like a real cinnamon roll. So our heroine in the story is Beth, and she is a widow who came into a fortune. And she really wants to avoid all the drama that comes with that. She's, I hate to say the word excited, but it wasn't an overly passionate marriage. And so she's excited to kind of have the space to be herself and have the funds to kind of keep her comfortable. But of course, all the eligible men are not going to let her leave her alone. So coincidentally, one night, her and Ian bump into each other, and he's never really been interested in settling down with anyone, and she wants to stay away from drama. So, of course, all sorts of shenanigans will ensue. I don't want to give away too much of the plot. There is a fun mystery element to it that kind of keeps it a little, not dark like Gothic, but there's some, things going on in the background that is more than just hot men in kilts, which again is fine if that was all there was. The thing about this book that I really liked is it portrays Ian's madness, that they call it, is basically modern day Asperger's or autism. It's very clear from how he acts that in today's society, he would be considered on the spectrum. But obviously in the 1880s, they wouldn't have had a spectrum to compare to. So I just really liked how that was depicted. That was one of the things that, again, it just set it apart from other, Victorian era, Regency era historical romances, because it was just more than, and again, I'm not complaining about this, but it's more than like the hero just growling, before they have, passionate sex. It was, he really like, and she, the patience she had with him while he, found his words and found his way. I mean, it was all very endearing, but the book was also steamy, so it really balanced that out nicely. So I can't say enough good things about it. I've already read the next two in the series with two of the other brothers, and I still have to read the fourth one. And they're just a delight. There's enough intrigue, and there seems to be the theme of a slight mystery element, so it makes it a breeze to read. I would like to try one of the audiobooks, I think, for the fourth one, because I'm curious if the narrators have accents, because I would not say no to that.
Oh, that's a good point. Anything set in Scotland.
Yeah,
Really should
because
listen
I
to the
mean,
audiobook.
yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you're looking for stuff, and it's still out everywhere, because I got my copy on, I think well, the one I got at the library, but the other one I did get on Amazon for like $4. They're everywhere. You can't escape the Mackenzie brothers. So that's my second pick, is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley, and it's out forever from Berkeley.
Well, we're going to leave Europe now.
Okay, I'm ready. Where are we going?
We're going to Port Royal, Jamaica, and we're
Ooh.
going back in time to 1741.
Oh, I love it. All right. Tell
Yes.
me more.
I have a pirate romance for you.
Yes. Non-related. We just finished the first season of Our Flag Means Death. So I'm like, I need all the pirate everything.
Okay. So I watched, I think, the first episode, and it was one of those things where I had a lot of other things to watch. So I put it on hold, and then I never went back to it. So you're saying I should go back to it?
You should go back, because it is, well, I don't want to give anything away, because I didn't know anything about it going in, other than the fact that I liked, it's very quirky, and not to sound lazy, they're less than 30-minute episodes, and sometimes you just need like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like 25 minutes of something silly.
Yeah, so we're going to Jamaica on pirates, a pirate ship. In Like Flynn is book 2 in Pirates of King's Landing trilogy by Lauren Smith, published in 2022 by the author. I've mentioned Lauren's pen name before on the show a few times, Emma Castle.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So, In Like Flynn opens in Port Royal, Jamaica, 1741. Pirate captain Brianna Holland, the daughter of notorious pirate king Thomas Buck, is sentenced to hang by the Royal Army when Brianna, dressed as a man, is caught trying to help a fellow pirate escape.
I love this already.
Royal Navy Lieutenant Nicholas Flynn, Errol Flynn, for anyone who knows classic pirate films, that's the inspiration. So Nicholas Flynn is tasked with posing as a prisoner to get close to Brianna, who's using the alias Brian. So he thinks that there is a young lad, Brian, who's a prisoner, and this guy, Brian, might know where Thomas Buck, the pirate king, is hiding. So Nicholas and Brian are now in the same cell, and they develop a relationship, and then some things happen, and then Nicholas realizes that Brian is actually a woman named Brianna. So
dun, dun, dun.
He decides to help her escape, because he has really, cares for Brianna, who he thought was Brian. And he knows that the Royal Army is going to be ruthless and, hang her real bad. I don't know. So he's like, I'm going to help you escape. And that's where their adventure together begins. Ooh. And I'm not going to tell you anything else, because this romance is just filled with story, and I don't want to tell anybody more than they need to know going into it. I want them to experience the awesomeness for themselves. Lauren, as is her pen name, Emma Castle, both are extraordinary storytellers. Lauren writes compelling plots, rich characters, and sexy hotness. Ooh. In Like Flynn checks all those boxes, plus is filled with adventure, steamy times on a pirate ship, super likable supporting characters because there is a crew of pirates. And then you also meet some characters from book one. Now you can read, this is book two. You can read the book separately for Pirates of King's Landing, but they do mention some other people from book one. Oh, and an interesting part of the pirate story in this novel is that this pirate crew does not keep prisoners or slaves. They respect women and they only take lives if they must.
Oh, how refreshing.
Yes, I know. So basically, they just plunder, which means that they just steal a lot of stuff, but they don't pillage and they don't hurt people unnecessarily.
Well,
so,
that's really nice.
yes, I believe
Aww.
that they are referred to, and I think this might be an actual thing in history, the gentlemen pirates.
That's literally our flag means death.
Oh, really?
Because as you're describing it, that's all I'm thinking about is the show, because he's literally called the Gentleman Pirate. And I'm like, this is exactly like the show.
That's
exactly,
awesome.
but,
well, then you definitely have to read Pirates Landing. It's a trilogy. There's 3 books. I've only read the one. And I know Lauren, and she does a lot of research. So she did a lot of media research and actual reading up about women pirates or pirate lass. They're often called pirate lasses. So yeah.
This is definitely being added to my list. This sounds perfect.
Oh, you need to. So definitely check out In Like Flynn by Lauren Smith.
I will.
Okay. So are we going to be going forward in time or backwards in time from 1741?
We're going to go forward about 40 years, give or take.
Oh, you did the math quickly.
Well, I'm really hoping it's accurate. And we're going back to merry old England, so get ready. So this one is Two Rogues Make a Right by Cat Sebastian. This came out in 2020 from Avon Impulse. This is the 3rd book in the Seducing the Sedgwick series. And I will say, I did not know that when I picked it up and read it, and I was totally fine. I didn't feel lost or anything. There's, as you just mentioned with In Like Flynn, there's characters mentioned, but it doesn't take you out of the story. Yeah. And it has several of my favorite tropes, including kind of a friends to lovers. And this always sounds funny, but it's a close proximity because one of them is nursing the other one back to health. And I don't know why, but I love that, because in real life that's stressful, but in books it's like, oh, how charming.
I am not fond of the nursing back to health trope. I get how that will bring characters together and forge a love, but I don't prefer that.
No, I totally understand. And the scenes where they were talking about, you know, him being ill and like the smell and him sweating, it's like, ew. Beyond that, like the yearning and the tension and all that I was like, tell me more. Will and Martin?
I think it was Will and Martin.
Okay, so the general premise is, and in case you couldn't tell from the title, this is a gay romance. So we have 2 heroes. Will Sedgwick has been searching for his childhood friend Martin for quite some time. Martin has been ill for a while, and no one knows where he is. So our story starts with Will finding poor Martin hiding in an attic, which the book described as a gothic nightmare. And if memory serves, that's accurate. So
I do love a good attic, someone hanging out in an attic, hiding in it. I love that.
I don't know. Well, especially in historical, it just adds to the atmosphere. I don't know what that says about
it. Does.
But I like it.
You're dark. You're dark.
I kind of am. So Will is intent on nursing Martin back to health, and he decides to kidnap him and take him to the country to recover. So they're going to be setting up shop in a cute, quaint little cottage in the English countryside, which, please, if we all have to be sick in the mid 1800s, I think that's where we'd all like to recover. Or at least me. I don't know. So Martin isn't necessarily complaining about Will taking care of him, but he is concerned that, you know, he won't survive this illness since it's been part of his life. And doctors have been saying he's a lost cause. So that kind of adds to, which I know sounds really funny to say, this is why I liked this book, but I liked that there was, because there's like a term for that when it's like there's a clock running in the background, like you don't know if someone has to like leave, or in this case, if someone's going to die. I will spoil it and say that it's a romance, so there will be a happy ending. So I don't want people to freak out and think I'm suggesting a book that'll devastate them. But the thing that really makes this book stand out for me with the romances I've read recently is the amount of pining. And I love friends to lovers when they don't think that the other one's into them, and there's like all these moments of tension. And I don't know, I just thought it was just really well done. And I've liked a lot of Cat Sebastian's other books, which you'll hear about in future episodes. But there was just enough of the quirky townspeople to kind of support Martin and Will on their quest for health, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. But yeah, I mean, it's sweet. I wouldn't say there was really any funny points to this book, but it was sweet, it was tender, it was steamy. And like I said, it's the third book in the trilogy. I have read the first one so far, just as good. But I don't think you have to worry about reading them in order, because I didn't feel like I was missing anything with Will and Martin's story from starting at the end. So that was Two Rogues Make a Right by Cat Sebastian, out now from Avon Impulse. Okay, so are we staying in England? Where are we going now?
We're staying in England.
Okay.
Yorkshire. So we're in the country. And
like
we are going to Regency era. That was Regency, though, too. The Cat Sebastian book, too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're staying in the Regency era with One Good Deed Deserves a Lover.
Oh, I love the title.
It is book 5 in Merry Farmers After the War series. The series was previously published by Oliver Heber Books in 2022, but now is listed as self-published by the author. One Good Deed Deserves a Lover is a humorous, gay Regency romance set in Yorkshire, England in 1816, following the Napoleonic Wars. Ooh. Which I don't know if you know anything about the Napoleonic Wars, but it was France versus Britain, Austria, Russia, and Prussia. Yes. So there was a lot going on. So Lord Anthony has a country house, and he hosts lots of parties that are tons of fun, especially thanks to his perpetual house guest, the vain, shallow, pleasure-seeking Lord Percy. Lord Percy has the aristocratic bloodline, but not the wealth. On the other hand, Lord Anthony's other house guest, the gruff, serious, very intelligent Lieutenant Clarence Bond, comes from money, but doesn't have the title. So we deal with...
I think I know where this is going.
So right there, we've got opposites attract, and I love house parties in historical romance. Yes. I love country house parties because I feel like anything goes, and anything
There's
did go.
There's always like then. Rooms or gardens or someplace they're going to run out and have like a little moment. Oh, I love it.
Percy, Lord Percy, although everyone calls him Percy, accidentally finds a missing child, and he undeservedly becomes a local hero.
He doesn't have to keep the child, does he?
No.
Okay.
No. So everyone in town is looking for this missing child, and he goes for less than honorable reasons. He just happens to be walking around. I don't know if it's like down by the beach, the moors or something. And anyway, he ends up finding this kid. This kid ends up running into him. And he's just like, hey, the kid's over here. And everyone just is like, oh, you're a hero. Everyone in town wants to celebrate him. So he never really felt like a hero before. So this feels good to him. I mean, he's always thought of himself and hasn't really put himself out there. So he enjoys the attention. And through that one act, it sets him on a journey of self-discovery that proves that he is a lot more than what he thinks he is. In doing so, he and Clarence start getting closer, and they have a lot of sex, and they fall in love. And so I absolutely adored this book. Opposites attract. The romance between Clarence and Percy is heartwarming, generous helpings of humor, and suspense and adventure, because there is a subplot involving like smuggling and covert operations. So there's a lot of story. Percy and Clarence are fabulously passionate about each other, and their differences really do complement each other. I mean, there's the obvious one of just them having identities that are kind of,
polar opposites.
Yeah, polar opposites, exactly. And Mary really writes each character, even Percy, who's vain and shallow, with a lot of depth, especially as he goes on his his merry way of enjoying being the local hero. And it's very steamy. As a matter of fact, and this cracks me up, and I think we should use this as a metric to talk about really steamy reads. Mary Farmer describes the steam level as, quote, fiery hot with all the eggplants.
I love it. I think we should use that. That's brilliant.
I think that's great. So definitely check out One Good Deed Deserves a Lover by Mary Farmer.
I will. That sounds awesome. And I love that there's humor, because humor, again, not that you need that in every book, but it's not common all the time in historical romances. So that's really nice.
It isn't. And I was surprised because it's almost like at times it's kind of like a little slapsticky that you're like, oh, this is really fun.
I like it. I like it. No, definitely going to read that. That sounds awesome.
Okay. So where to next, Libby?
Okay, next we're staying in England, and we're basically staying in the same time period too. So
okay,
making this easy. This is one by, I know a lot of people who are huge historical romance fans. They always say they love most of her work, if not all of it. This book is Someone to Care by Mary Balogh, and I might be saying that wrong. It's Balogh. She's kind of one of the OGs of historical romance writing. She's got a bazillion books, and they're all fabulous. This one came out in 2018 from Berkeley, and it's book 4 in the Westcott series. I have read several of them, none of them in the right order, and I have been fine in terms of being not being confused.
Good to know.
Yeah. So some of the tropes that drew me to this one in particular was it has a grumpy sunshine, which I just love in most situations. It's technically a second chance romance because these two have met before. And the thing I like the most, it's love after 40 in a historical romance. And I don't mind the pretty common trope of, the virgin woman and the very experienced man and all that stuff. That's fine. But sometimes it's just nice to read a book where a woman in the 1800s actually has a good time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The general premise is Viola Kingsley is the Countess of Riverdale, which just sounds perfect. And she's been widowed for over 2 years. And much like Beth in the other book I mentioned, she's kind of okay that her husband's dead. I mean, it wasn't anything like nefarious or anything, but her children are grown. She has, enough of an income that she can kind of just live her life. And she's like, all right. So, but instead of Beth, who wanted to avoid drama with Ian McKenzie, our girl Viola, she wants to live a little. And so she makes this decision to live, and on that day, she bumps into an old acquaintance, the Marquis of Dorchester, Marcel Lamar. So, and again, I'm going to tell you right now, he's a dreamboat, like a total silver fox. So Marcel has been a pretty famous womanizer in their social circle since his wife died nearly 20 years ago. And their paths crossed after his wife died while she was a young bride with her young children. And he, being the perceived cad that he was, made some advances, and she's like, nah, I don't think so. But she wasn't not attracted to him. So fast forward, their paths cross. They're both now single. Everybody's out of the house. They both got a little money. They can do their thing. So they decide to buck tradition and travel the English countryside together, just enjoying life and the moment. They're not expecting this to be a long-term thing, but they're just trying to have some fun. So I don't want to spill what happens on their time in the countryside, but rest assured, it's sexy, it's fun. There's a few quirky moments. There's like a local festival they go to, which is kind of fun, watching like a fish out of water situation. But yeah, it is. I mean, there's a reason that Mary's books are so popular. I think I read this in a day and a half. It just had excellent pacing. The side characters were fun. It was nice reading a historical romance where, and again, I don't have anything against this, but they both knew what they were doing, and it was fun to watch them do those things. And it didn't have, compared to the other ones I'm talking about, it didn't have nearly as much like conflict as in terms of like, oh, if we don't do this, we're going to lose our business or we're going to lose our money. It was just like they didn't want to look, trashy to the aristocracy. So I'm like, I can handle that level of conflict.
Okay. Yeah. It sounds like a delight.
It was. That is the perfect way to say it. It was a delight.
Wow. Man, anything in the country, the English countryside.
I know.
Like road tripping through it, rolling around in the countryside, the grass. stuck in a cottage.
Yes.
I just love anything like that.
So that was Someone to Care by Mary Balow. Came out 2018 from Berkeley. Where are we going next?
Well, we're kind of staying around the same area, but we're going to 880 AD during the Viking times.
Holy cow, I'm ready. Let's go.
The Viking Chiefs Marriage Alliance by Lucy Morris, published by Mills and Boon in the UK and Harlequin Historical in the US in 2021. This is Lucy's debut historical romance, and it was one of my favorite reads of 2021. I am a huge fan of Lucy Morris's work. All of her Viking romances are fantastic, and I decided to start with the very first. So the Viking Chiefs Marriage Alliance is set in 880 AD, which I know is a lot to like wrap your mind around. Yeah. But don't worry, it doesn't feel as ancient as it sounds because people make love in any century. So it is set in the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria, which today encompasses parts of England and Scotland.
Okay.
So we're kind of still around the same area, just a different era. After the funeral of her husband, a loathsome Norse chief, Gyda sets sail from Viken, which is present-day Norway, for the big city of Jorvik, which is now today York, England. So Gyda is hated her husband, and it was an arranged marriage situation. So she's like, peace, I'm out. She sails to Jorvik to start anew. It's a bustling city, full of merchants, and she does do crafts and stuff. Like, I forget what craft, but she does crafty things that she could sell at Jorvik.
Is it like Viking style Etsy shops?
I kind of envision it like a current day flea market.
Okay.
Jorvik. Like a lot of stalls where you could buy jewelry and I like artisanal olive oil, things like that. Whatever that would be back then. Gyda is on her longship with her crew, and a storm destroys her ship, and she almost drowns, but she is saved by Torstein Bergson.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, and he is a big Viking dude, and his bark is much worse than his bite.
Ooh.
Now, the two, when he saves, now she's a very proud woman, Gyda. So, she wasn't the easiest person to really save. And, she was a bit icy towards Torstein. She wasn't just, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So he's very intimidating. She's a very proud woman. He interprets that as her being very icy. And she thinks that, oh, he's just this big bad guy. But they do have mutual connections because I guess in the Viking community, no matter where you're from, people know people.
It's not that big of a community, I guess.
I think, being she was married to this chief, he was very well known in the other parts of the lands. Yes. So because they have mutual connections, the people that they know in common, they were like, hey, you guys should enter into an arranged marriage. She has some status, and Torstein, you want to be the chief and the chieftain. So why don't you guys get married? It would be mutually beneficial. So Torstein and Gyda get married in a traditional Viking wedding ceremony that is described in wonderful detail by Lucy Morris. It's such a treat to read. Torstein and Gyda must now heal from the trauma of their past relationships, because Torstein has a story there too, before they can learn to love each other. So they need to heal, and they do. And it's a very emotional love story, which I think a lot of people, when they think of Viking romance, I'm actually not sure what they think of, but I think they think of just like his brutality has won me over eventually, wore me down. But no, this is really an emotional, love story. They do fall deeply in love. Torstein is a cinnamon roll.
Oh,
yes. And you really do learn a lot about Viking and Norse traditions and customs. Lucy did a fantastic job of research. I did interview her a number of times on Rita Seeks Romance. She loves researching, put a lot of research into this, and it's just a beautiful and unique historical romance. I mean, I had never read a Viking romance prior to reading Lucy's work, and honestly, I don't want to read anyone else's. If it's Viking, it's like it's got to be Lucy Morris. Check out the Viking Chiefs Marriage Alliance by Lucy Morris.
I definitely will. I like that it's a completely different part of history that I usually don't read or watch a lot of.
Yeah.
It just comes from a different perspective with history. And so I don't know, I'm intrigued.
Where are we going now?
Okay, so now we're kind of still in England. Well, no, kind of. We are in England, but we're also in America for a little bit. Okay. And this is one where I judged a book by its cover and I love it. And I had to buy it as soon as I saw it. So I am doing The Heiress Gets a Duke by Harper St. George. This came out in 2021 from Berkeley, and it's book one in the Gilded Age Heiress series. And I will be honest, I have the others, but I haven't read them yet. Again, the covers are stunning, and I'm a sucker for a good cover. I know we talked about this in a previous episode, but I love mass market paperbacks. I just love, there's something about curling up with a mass market paperback and just spending an afternoon back in time. Just love. So
I think they're more legit. Like when I look at a mass paperback, I'm like, this is OG. This is this is old school. This is legit. This is real. Like this is a real book.
Yep. No, I feel the same way. I love it. Love.
And yes, all of the books in that series have beautiful covers.
Gorgeous. The dresses and the colors. Oh, just pops. They're beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And the tagline for this book says, "An American fortune made in the railroad industry does not buy access to the upper echelons of Victorian high society. ... unless you need a marriage of convenience." Yes. So that's the main trope for this one. So the story follows an American heiress, August Crenshaw, who is not at all interested in getting married to anybody, let alone some stuffy British lord across the pond. And she really wants to focus on her family's ironworks business, but she's a woman during the Victorian era, so I think we all know where that's going.
Yeah.
So for as progressive as August's views are, her parents are absolutely dead set on getting her or her sister married to a nobleman over in England, because they have the money, but they don't have the title. And there's, much like in Downton Abbey, kind of, you have people with the title, but they don't have the money. So at the beginning of the story, it's her August's sister Violet who is promised to our hero, who is Evan Sterling, the Duke of Rothschild. And Evan doesn't really care. He just needs to get the money because he's really worried about the people who rely on him. Because that's the thing I always forget in these books, is that, yeah, they're rich and they live in manors, but they have everybody in the village that kind of needs, the lord or the nobleman to, do his job so they can survive. So he is very worried about the people that live in his village. And so he was at first in the book totally fine with marrying Violet, whatever. And then he meets August, and then all bets are off. And so I don't want to give away too much with the story into how they get together, but it was just a lot of fun. I think there was at least one steamy scene. It's been over a year since I read it, so you know how it is. I remember loving it, and I remember I liked August a lot. And Evan was great. He was a good hero, and I like her sister and friends who were introduced in this book that are the heroines of the rest of the series. So they just have a really good friendship. It was really. I like how Harper describes the process, and there is a character who is married to a really old guy, and they talk about how this poor girl, had no choice. That's what her family wants. And then I fell down a rabbit hole researching online with all of the true stories of women who just were, forced into these marriages of convenience just for, one half of the family to get a title and the other half to get the money. So it was really well researched, but not in a dry way. Again, gives me total Downton Abbey vibes with the general premise, which, if you're into that show, is not a bad thing.
Oh, I'm a huge Downton Abbey fan, and I love the show Gilded Age on HBO.
Yes. I've only seen a couple episodes of that, but I really, the production value, it's gorgeous, both those shows.
It's super entertaining. I love the Gilded Age. I love that era in history. I love reading about, the Vanderbilts and the different families.
And it's so funny to think, because, right now it's like, well, what would it matter? But it was, the way they described it, like these people were obsessed with getting into high society because they were the new rich, and they just wanted that clout. And it's just, I don't know. It was, again, very well researched, but not clunky. It just flowed with the story really nicely.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that is my recommendation for The Heiress Gets a Duke by Harper St. George.
So we're going to stay in England.
Okay.
Earlier Victorian. So
Okay.
A Lady's Formula for Love, published in 2021 by Berkeley. Book 1 in Elizabeth Everett's The Secret Scientists of London trilogy.
Ooh.
This was one of my favorite reads of 2021. A Lady's Formula for Love is set in London during the early Victorian era in 1842. Widow and scientist Lady Violet, another widow.
The widow episode.
Yes, historical romances, a lot of them. There is, if it's not a nubile virgin, it's, oh, they're a widow and, they had a horrible first marriage.
But they're ready to live it up.
They're ready for sex. Lots of sex. The widow and scientist Lady Violet is the founder of Athena's Retreat, a women's club that doubles as an underground sanctuary, complete with laboratories, to advance the studies of other women scientists. When Lady Violet begins work on a confidential mission for the crown, an act of sabotage prompts Violet's stepson, who she gets along with, to hire protection for his stepmother and her club members. Enter Arthur Neeland, a reserved officer who takes his job very seriously.
Ooh, I bet he does.
Oh, yes. And he expects compliance from Violet and the women he was hired to keep safe. Of course, he was wrong in believing that would happen. The fiercely independent Violet and her outspoken, eccentric club members make his job difficult at every turn. Violet and Arthur eventually develop feelings for each other, proving that the formula for love has no antidote.
Oh, I love it.
I came up with that on my own.
2 thumbs up.
Thank you. I reworked that pun a few times before it was just right.
Well, it's perfect.
I so loved A Lady's Formula for Love. A brilliantly funny cast of characters captivates from page 1. There's intrigue, suspense, humor, and an emotionally engaging and very sexy romance between Violet and Arthur that defies societal standards of the time. She was a woman with a title and he was not. He was also a police officer, which even though they needed them, they were considered kind of low ranking as far as society is concerned. There is a memorable scene in which Arthur and Violet become intimate. And I believe it's in her boudoir, in her dressing room, in her bedroom, which is quite steamy.
Yeah, go get it, Violet.
Yes. Their love connection is profoundly satisfying. And they also learn to love themselves and accept themselves because there are some things in their past that they are working towards overcoming, healing. So it's also a large dose of them learning to love themselves while also learning to love each other.
Oh, that sounds charming.
Yes, it is. So check out A Lady's Formula for Love by Elizabeth Everett.
Ooh, I like it.
Yes. And I believe that's our roundup. Thanks for joining us, romance readers.
Happy reading, everyone.